Accidentally Kelly Street, where friends and strangers sometimes meet. Accidentally Kelly Street, I never thought life could be so sweet.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I used to call this my Thankful Thursday call, and then it came to be like Kelly's morning show. And Winnie Brown was like, Kelly, can we stick with a name? Like, I need to tell people what this is. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just all over the place. Thankful Thursday, Thirsty Thursday. But today we've got a great guest. I try and bring someone on every Thursday to not only inspire, but just to kind of, talk about life. We talk about work a lot here, of course, but we have that work-life balance. So I'm bringing the balance. I bring the party. I bring the balance. But today I've got Tracy Young, and oh gosh, my relationship started with her mom and dad, Sandy Young, Danny Young, and I didn't even know they had a daughter. I thought I was the daughter. I would go on trips with them, and I would just sit and talk to Danny, I probably hours. And then this girl would walk by and be like, "Hey," and then he's like, "Hey, honey." I'm like, What?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my daughter." I'm like, "Oh, my heart." So I was a little jealous of Tracy, but her dad, Danny, if you know him, you know why. He's just full of knowledge, and Sandy's just full of heart too, and just beautiful parents. I saw that they celebrated their 55th wedding anniversary recently. Thank you, Facebook. I am a stalker and a big fan. But Tracy, I never got to really know you, really. I've seen you on a lot of trips. That's a good thing. And I just started looking at your Facebook, and just wanted to know you because I know your parents are amazing, so I felt like you should be too.
Well, thanks.
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, none.
But I want to read something first, and then I'll let you introduce yourself. So God calls me like a leaf in the wind, and I like to catch things. And I'm a feeler. I'm an empath. I go on intuition and stuff. So my guests aren't just like, oh, let me just pick a name out of the hat. It's more like, wow, she just put this on her Facebook, and it really touched me. It really hit a nerve, right? It really hit something. And I feel like when that happens to me, that impact or that feeling, I want to share it with you guys. And I'm sure some of you can relate to Tracy and her story, and just the kind of person she's been and who she is now. And we're all on a journey here, so you'll hear about that in a few minutes. But so one of the posts that Tracy made on Facebook, she had said, I moved a few months ago and just recently joined a new gym. I'm still trying to figure out what's there, where everything is. What I've noticed so far is that there aren't a lot of girls there, but the ones who are all strong and in amazing shape. I was there earlier, and one such girl was working out close by. My thoughts consisted of, she looks great. So cool. She's working out with her man. I love her shoes. And the look on her face said something completely different. I saw her in the bathroom after I'd finished up and got the typical girl look of toe to head stank face. I was just about to tell her I thought she looked great. I held on to that comment. Maybe I should have told her. Maybe I should have said it. Who knows? Girls are tough. I wish female relationships could be like guys have. It made me think back to leading women's ministry. It was hard for a lot of reasons, but it was so good for a lot of other reasons. I had the opportunity to get to know a lot of amazing ladies while doing God's work. I miss some of it a lot. There are other places I never want to be involved with again, but I definitely miss the relationships. Being female is hard. Being a strong female is even harder. It can be isolating. I also know that girls need other girls in their lives. I've lost a lot over the years, a couple of those I may never get over. I'm grateful for the ones I do have, the ones who have stuck with me, the ones who cheer for me, who have cried with me, prayed for me, and who I can count on no matter what. It's not always the ones you expect it to be. Wow. Do you feel me? Right? I mean, I'm that woman. I'm probably both of those women, like at certain times in my life, I think. I've been the one looking, admiring, and thinking, oh gosh, we could be friends. I could be her friend. And then she gives me a look. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. All right, maybe I was wrong. But then I could have been the other girl giving you the look, depending on maybe my day, or I'm in my head, or, we don't mean it. But wow, Tracy, yeah. So I saw that and felt that. So I just had to have you on this call and talk to you and get to know you better and let everyone get to know Tracy Young. So good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate you reaching out. This journey for me is a really interesting one. I usually start out on the easy road and do my best to just search out the hard road and take that one instead. So, I try to live my life very authentically and very genuinely. I think it's the Sandy Young DNA in me. I have a lot of Danny Young DNA. Most of it's Danny's. But those pieces I think come straight from my mom. So anyway, I appreciate you having me here. It's such an honor, honestly, to just be asked to speak to all of you. So thanks so much for the invite.
Absolutely. So I know you are a Louisiana girl.
I am.
I went to New Orleans once with Scott, and it was amazing. Like, it wasn't ever on my bucket list. I was like, all right, New
Yeah,
Orleans, like it's party. I mean, I can party
yeah,
anywhere. If you know me, I will
sure.
party anywhere. But what's it like living down in Louisiana? And have you been there your whole life?
Born and raised here. I moved from Louisiana to Colorado when I was probably 23, maybe. Right after I graduated. I got married at 22, I think, as an insane decision, and moved to Colorado, where I lived for about 23 years. Moved back here, ended up getting divorced, moved back here. That was the first decision I made after I was leaving, was that I was coming back here. So my son and I moved back here in the middle of COVID,
Oh gosh, okay.
June of
Mhm.
2020.
Mhm. So you have some kids. You have a son
I
and
have one son,
Okay.
and a precious little dog.
Yeah, there are kids too, for sure.
Winston.
Winston. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, when you said you
Mhm.
got married at 22, I got a flashback of myself because at 22, even 21, I was like, I want to get married. I want to have a kid. I want to get this done. Like, let's go.
Yeah,
And yeah, my mom had me when she was 20. She got pregnant when she was 19. And I was an only child. And now I know why, because she
right,
was a child. Like people are
right.
like, oh, you're only a child. I'm like, yeah, but I know why. And if I had any other siblings, I don't know if we'd survived.
Right. Fortunately, I waited. I didn't have my son until I was 28 or so. So he at least, I grew up a little bit between, getting married and then, but still, I mean, he's 24 now, and I look at him and I'm like, I was married for 2 years by now, and I can't even fathom that when I look at you.
Isn't it funny the reflection we do as they get older and you look at yourself
Yeah.
at that age and I'm like, oh gosh, okay.
Yeah. Should have waited.
So married, went through divorce. That's got to be tough. My parents, they should have gotten divorced. Let's put it that way. And they didn't. I don't know what's worse. Sometimes
Yeah.
I don't know the other side of that, but I always thought like, gosh, mom, leave him. And she's like, no, you need a father. I'm like, FYI, he's not a father and he's not a husband. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
So I know that must have been tough. You talk about being a strong woman. And sometimes divorce might seem the easier solution, but I think
Mm.
it could be the harder one, just depending on who you are and what your situation is.
Yeah, I think that I stayed married as long as I did just because, well, I mean, it was how I was raised. My mom and dad just had their 55th. So, um, divorce was never something that I was planning on. It wasn't ever part of the plan. Um, Now, that's not to say that we hadn't been separated and things like that. We had divorce papers drawn up previously. Um, but I don't know. I have learned a lot after the fact. When you're in the middle of it, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. You
Yeah.
can't always see the
Chaos.
picture for what
Yeah.
it is.
Hmm.
And walking away, by far the best decision I've ever made, for myself and for my son. And it's kind of like you said, he was at a point where, he was like, Mom, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? You're just going to stay here and he's just going to lie to you for the next 8 years, like he has for the last 8. Like, and it was honestly, I had 3 conversations. It was my ex-husband is narcissistic, and I didn't know what that meant until I walked away and started looking at it a little bit harder. And so, there are things that happened that I knew were not normal, but you're in the middle of it, and this is somebody that you commit to for the rest of your life, right? And you have a kid, and you have a life, and you have all of this stuff, and that's not really the road you expect to be on. And so, the other thing that I realized after I walked away, was gaslighting and emotional abuse. And, all of these things that I had been living suddenly had a name. And it wasn't just that it was me, because I was always led to believe that it was just me. I was the one with the issue. I couldn't communicate. I was always wrong. And it was just a list of things, it was always me. And it really wasn't, but that's hard to undo. There was a final straw. There was definitely a moment where he completely lost it and took it out on my son. And, that started the path to walking away. But even at that moment, it was like I couldn't make a decision on my own. I am incredibly strong, incredibly independent. And I was in a place in my life where I couldn't make a decision because I was told that everything I did was wrong. And so I never thought that what I was thinking was the right thing. So I had 3 pivotal conversations. One was with my mom
Mm.
3 months after the fact.
Hmm.
One was with a friend of mine who was like, what is wrong with him? He's
Mm.
scared. He took us to the airport for a women's retreat.
Hmm.
And she said, he scared me on the way to the airport. And I'm like, I need you to tell me what you mean by that.
Right.
And then the third one was my son saying, how long are you going to keep doing this?
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
was 19 at the time.
Hmm.
um,
Well, yeah, like you
Physical
said,
abuse started, with him.
hmm yeah.
And I just didn't want to keep him in that situation. And ultimately that was the deciding factor for me to leave, was that, if he's willing to do this, what's next?
Yeah.
You know?
And like you said, when you're in it, sometimes you're not really seeing all the signs and maybe you don't want to. You might be in denial
Exactly.
because you're,
Exactly.
you look at your mom and dad, of course, and you're like, well, I'm supposed to have that. That's what marriage is.
Hmm.
I'm supposed to live happily ever after. And,
Yeah.
you're just, and then you don't want to be selfish. I think too, as women, we're taking care of, things. We're taking care of the family. We're taking care of the child or children. And if there's children involved, it's like, okay, well, if I leave, this is going to really change his or her life, right? Not just mine. And
Yeah.
yeah.
the thought of thinking about how to untangle it, when you're together for 25 years, it's like there's a lot of stuff tangled together. And trying to process even how to undo that was debilitating at times. It's like I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Right. Well, you made a decision. I think that's the
Mhm.
hardest part because like you said, you just couldn't. You're like, what do they call it? Analysis paralysis, like because you're
Mhm.
constantly thinking like, if I do this, this is, if I stay, if I go, and then you're just like, all right, I got to make a decision. And you did. And then you're like, you're okay. Look, you're okay. Right.
Mhm.
And it's been what, 4 years or
Mhm.
okay.
Right about, yeah, almost. So I've been here 4 years. That conversation happened at the end of February, 2020, and everything locked down that next week.
Mm. Wow,
And so we
crazy.
got quarantined together, which was super cool. Highly recommend it. Um, for,
God was like, are you
until
sure? We're gonna
June.
make sure.
I know, until June. And it was, my dad was like, you shut your mouth and you don't say a word,
I
He's
mean,
like, everybody was just fearful of what was going to happen at that point. I was in the guest room. My son and I like locked our doors at night, like completely like living in fear from, the end of February until June when we left. And I
yeah.
mean, he didn't know we were leaving until he wouldn't have known as soon as he did, but U-Haul, thanks to U-Haul, we had rented a U-Haul previously that went to his email. And so when I actually pulled the trigger on renting the U-Haul, he got the email on it. But fortunately, it was like the week before. I mean, he didn't have any idea what we were doing until
wow, that
the
one
week
little slip
before.
up.
It's all right. It was fine. So,
wow.
it ended up being trauma counseling and, building my business in the middle of all of that. And, I can remember sitting on the floor because that's all I had was floor at that moment, sitting on the floor and in my new house here and running appointments, and having recruiting calls and things like that, because I knew that suddenly what went from, we both made good money, we made great money together, and it was going to be just on me. And,
so this was kind of a good distraction, right?
it was a good distraction. I needed it for sure. But I also got to do this business the way that I wanted to for the first time, without somebody saying that they were letting me do it. And, every decision I made had to be passed through him, even though he was not a part of it, And so it was the first time that I had the ability to just do what I wanted to do with my business, with my life, with, the decisions I made and all of that. Right. So,
yeah.
it
A lot of
was
new
new and
things.
different, but it was great.
Yeah. So we talk about transitions a lot on this call, and I have a book that actually is called Transitions. But when you're starting these new things, like, okay, you have a new relationship with yourself and your son, and then you have a new job and you're in a new house. It sounds like, you had to probably just hit the ground running. Did you ever sit for a minute on that floor and be like, okay, like I'm okay, I'm good. This is where I belong, and it's going to be okay.
No, not necessarily. I so the part of the story is, we had two houses in Colorado, and one that we lived in previously, and then we built a new house that we had only been in for right at a year. And so first house was being rented. So I couldn't exactly like buy a new house here in Louisiana. So, my mom and dad were up in Colorado for a meeting, and we were having lunch, and they're like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And, I don't know what that looks like. And so I have two dogs. One at the time, I had a German Shepherd and a Pit Mix. You can't exactly go to an apartment with those two restricted breeds, can't live just anywhere. And so I'm like, I really don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to leave. I can't buy a house. I have to. And my dad's like, I can. And I'm like, get out of here, whatever. And so they, they were there for a few days, left, went home right before the shutdown and our lockdown. And my dad called me that next week and he said, "Hey, mom and I were talking. And, I know that you can't buy a house, but we can, and we're going to. So I just need for you to tell me what it is you want, that kind of thing." And he's like, "The house behind us and over one is open. They just finished it. Same builder that we had." I'd walked through the house when they were building it, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
wow. I'm not going to cry this
Um,
morning.
I know. They bought me a house because they
Wow.
wanted me to be able to leave whenever I could
Yeah.
and not have to worry about where I was going to live.
Yeah.
And so 11 months later, I bought it back from them.
Oh, Tracy,
So I
yay.
was a part of this. I was a part of
Yeah.
Symmetry. I was full time here for just under a year when
Mm,
all of this went down.
mm,
So it wasn't it wasn't brand new to me. I didn't move and then start. I
mhm.
was already into it. I was already running appointments. I just had to do the pivot of, not being in home anymore,
Yeah.
which was great because I was sitting on the floor in a house that I was trying to unpack while I was running appointments, right? And so, like, I had some furnitures, but I couldn't, most places, you couldn't even walk in. You couldn't just go to furniture stores and things like that, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
when you did, nothing was available.
No.
Everything was, all the manufacturers were shut down and all of
Yeah.
that. So it took me months to get
Mm.
furniture in some rooms. And so, I never, back to your original question, I never took the time to just sit and say, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Or I'm capable of doing this. It was, I put my head down and I worked
Yeah.
because that's what I know how to do. And, um, I've never had issues with being disciplined or being, motivating myself or, working hard or doing those
Mhm.
things. And when I tell you that those things saved me,
Mhm.
those things saved me because there were so many days where, I would set my alarm early. I'm not a morning person, y'all. I mean, you can ask Kelly my response when she told me what time the call was. Not a morning person. I don't want to talk to
Yeah.
people that at this time of the day.
Yes.
Um, and so I would set my alarm early. I would go to the gym because my dad let me, I say, let me go to the
Mm.
gym. It was in the middle of COVID and my mom and dad were panicked that,
Yeah.
they're in their 70s and, not always a picture of health. And so
Sure.
they were super concerned about being on COVID's list, right?
Mhm.
And so I got him to agree to let me go to the gym because we really didn't we didn't go anywhere. We were
Mm-mm.
trying to make sure that my mom and dad were safe
Yeah.
and I could either see them every day
Mhm.
or I could live behind them and over one house and never see them. And so I chose to see them every day and just
Yeah.
not do anything.
Yeah.
And I went to the gym at the crack of dawn because nobody was there. And so that between the gym and just, working,
Mhm.
that's all I did. But I mean, my alarm would go off and I'd be like, I don't want to do this today, God.
Mm.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And he would very clearly say, get up,
Mm.
just get up and go. And
Mhm.
that's all you need to do. I got
Mm.
the rest, just get up. And so I would get up and I would go to the gym and I would blare music and I would just pound it out at the gym because that's what my body and my brain needed
Yeah.
to I needed all the endorphins I could get at that moment.
Yeah.
So
For
I
sure.
would come home, I would go for a walk with my dad and my mom would make us breakfast. I'd have breakfast with them and then I'd go home and shower and start
Get
my
to
day.
work. Wow.
And then I
Good.
would
Well,
work and that's all I would do. I would put my head down and I would work.
yeah. I want to just touch on real quick. You had mentioned you liked doing the women's ministry, but you didn't. So talk about that just a little bit, and then I want to open it up for some comments and anybody that wants to share today.
So church is hard. Church is full of people.
Yeah.
People are hard. That's the easy way to say. We were really good friends with the pastors at our church, and my ex became the men's ministry pastor, and he started the men's ministry program there. And I ended up the lady that was working. She did children's ministry and also women's ministry which I was involved with as a participant, but she ended up leaving and going to another church. And so they approached me about doing it. And I was like, you are out of your mind. There is no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And, God. So I agreed to do it with another lady that would, because I just don't like doing, okay, I'm not super girly, y'all. I'm not. And I say y'all, so sorry. I'm not girly. And so I've never had a whole bunch of girlfriends because I put in that post, girls are hard.
Yeah.
The ones that I've had inevitably have let me down for one reason or another because, of you needed them and they decided that that was the moment they didn't want to be there. And so I just never had a lot of girl relationships.
Yeah.
And so, and you want me to do women's, God's got such a personality, y'all, such a sense of humor. And so I agreed to do it, but I didn't want to do the events because I didn't want to do bunko and,
my friends would always be like, we're doing game night. I'm like, I'm not coming.
I didn't
I'm
want to
just
do that
telling
part.
you.
I didn't want to. But I was like, I'll do like the Bible studies and some of those things because those are the things that I enjoy doing. And so we were a great team. And then she left. And so then it was just me. And, I had some really amazing times. I made some really amazing friends. But, when you are behind the scenes of a church, I was on the church board. We went through, it's comical, y'all. My ex-husband and I were doing marriage ministry.
Wow.
That's cool. Where I got to stand up in front of everybody every week and say that I was the reason that we had our issues, and I wasn't good at communicating and, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And so, we were a part of that church and we went through everything. We had taken a sabbatical because I just couldn't deal at that moment. I just couldn't keep it all together. And that was when COVID hit. And what I recognized at the moment that COVID hit was that he really he needed all of the validation of going to church every week and having people, you're so amazing for 2 hours, and that would refill his whatever he needed. And being in COVID and being on sabbatical, he wasn't getting that. And that's kind of where he lost it. And so the church piece of that was, I never really necessarily went back to that church. We were really good friends with the pastors, and, I saw how their families were. And it just left such a bad taste in my mouth, for so many reasons. And, he could do no wrong. And, just all of it, right?
Yeah.
Divorce. And of course, I was the one that was leaving. So clearly it was something that I had done. And it was just so many things. And so I miss the relationship piece. I miss women's retreat. I miss, because there were some amazing godly things that happened in those moments. There are a lot of it that I don't miss. And I mean, I've struggled with my whole relationship with God has been touchy the last few years just because of it. It's like those people failed me at a time that I really needed them. And at the end of the day, I think what you have to keep in mind is they're still people, and, they're going to suck. They're not going to be there when you want them to be there. They're not going to, I was the one that always reached out to everybody. Hey, hope you have a great day. Hey, thinking about you. Hey, can't wait to see you. I was that person always sending all the text messages out.
Yeah.
Well, when you're in the middle of really hard stuff,
it's hard to be that person still.
and you can't be that person, and you realize that your phone is really quiet.
Yeah.
It's in those moments where you're like, what was it all for?
I know.
Nobody's here for you in the meantime. And so, there are some terrible things that go through your head.
Sure.
And, I worked through some of it, not all of it, with counseling and
Well, it takes
all
time.
of that. But it's, I think that you have to, I don't know that I would ever have myself back in that situation, honestly. And I know God's up there like, ha, right. different plans. But at this moment, you know, I don't want to be a part of a church board. I would like to go to church and be blissfully ignorant about the behind the scenes. You know, I want to go and I want to be there for the reason I'm there. I want to hear God's word. I want to hear the message. I want to worship and I want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't, you know, so that's where that came from. You know, that's kind of the backside of that.
All right. Well, that's
Girls
good.
are hard.
It is hard. And
Church is hard.
Scott and I were at a church in Virginia that we liked. And then the pastor left and I'm like, oh my gosh. And that felt like wrong, you know, and but he had other stuff to do. And then a new pastor came in and then I'm like, I don't really like him. Is that okay? Like, I don't want to come back. Like, it just kind of messed up the vibe of everything and how things were being done. But
There's a lot.
I am thankful that I feel that symmetry and the women here and even the men, like the group, the community. Meredith Ellison talked about that last week about community and belonging. And I think that's kind of helped me as a woman and a mom and a wife. And I've met so many amazing women and men too. But just to have those friendships here and like the people are real here for the most part.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I do want to take a few minutes and open this up. Gosh, there's so many good things. If anyone wants to unmute and just share.
Can I share something?
Absolutely.
I want to share the impact, Tracy, that you probably have on your son that you don't even realize yet. So coming from a son that was in your son's position and a very abusive alcoholic father and a son that begged his mom for years to leave and she wouldn't. The impact that will have on your son as someone that's had to go through it, know that you did more for him than you probably will ever understand.
Thank you. I mean, that means a lot because it's hard. You know, he still struggles for sure. It's a broken relationship. And, you know, every day when it was like, just get up and work, it was because, and the counseling, trauma counseling, all of the things that I did were so that he never had a reason to say, you know, you didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
and I didn't get that. So like, I know what it's like to not have that. And it ended with my dad killing himself. So like, it's like, so just know, like from someone that's gone to a lot of therapy and became a Christian and went through counseling, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but know that that decision radically changed your son's life in a very good way, even though, right, it's not always just easy to see the other side of the forest through the trees. That's like an amazing thing you did for him.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah. I grew up with an alcoholic and again, my mom had to leave in the middle of the night and sneak away. And I had already moved out and I got out as soon as possible. I couldn't even afford anything. I just was like, please, a friend of mine, we moved in together and barely made it. But my mom had to leave in the middle of the night. And then I knew where she was. My dad would just hound me and, you know, call me and say, you know, threaten, and, you know, but yeah, I know a lot of people on this call can relate in some way. Does anybody else want to share, please?
I have a question. Yeah, Tracy, I think one of the things that when you were talking about, I was like, oh yeah, totally resonates with me. And I think working with other women. And I find that in my prior life as a lawyer and other things, I worked with mostly men. And I can say this because I'm a woman. I'll say it. It's really challenging sometimes to work with women who are is not as reliable, consistent, or disciplined, especially in a work environment where we need to get stuff done. And if I can't trust you to do your part, or you know, it's just really can fall apart. And just you know, you sounds like you were able to work well. Trying to have more compassion and understanding. But you know, sometimes when we're working on projects, it's just like, it's not about liking, or, you know, it's about the work is yes, and I value relationships, you know, people come first, but how do you do that in balance? Like, especially because here where we're working, right, it is, yes, we get to work with wonderful people and friends, but it's this is not a friendship club, you know. So balancing the two, I guess.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, I think you have to make it a friendship club. I think that as hard as girls are, and as hard as relationships are, it's going to be very difficult to be successful in this business without relationships. You will be a team of one, you know, and it's hard. And so you have to meet people where they are. You know, we hear it all the time. And what does that look like realistically? Not everybody's going to work like me. More times than not, they probably aren't. And so I still struggle with it. I mean, you can ask my dad. We have this conversation all the time. He's like, just stop. I'm like, but they should be. And he's like, they shouldn't be. They're doing what they, and so that's part of the growth of this business. You have to meet people where they are, and their work ethic may be 2 hours a week. But I think that you have to be okay with that, and you have to find more people. And I also think that if you love on the people, I'm like Kelly said at the beginning, I'm the empath, I'm the deep feeler, I'm the, you know, this is who I am. Whether you see me on the street or in an appointment or doing this, I'm no different. I know that I have to have relationship with people. I have to get to know my people, and I have to love on them outside of this business. You know, if I can't do that, I'm not going to be a successful leader here, because it's not about you need to do this. This is a come on, let's go do this business. You know, it's a we're going to do it together business. And, you know, that's the hard part. You have to put, here's what I've learned over the last 4 years in every aspect of my life. I can't let what's happened to me dictate who I am. So even though I think girls are hard, and I've had some really, you know, difficult things happen. I've had people who I thought would be in my life forever. I mean, outside of marriage, like I thought that I have a friend that I just in the last year have, it's completely gone away. Somebody I thought would have the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
I can't let that keep me from being friends with the next person that walks into my life.
Right.
I still have to be vulnerable. I still have to put myself out there. And what I know is I'm going to get hurt because of that. And that's just a part of it. I can't live here with people because I'm too afraid to get hurt. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether y'all are friends or not. Your job is going to have to be to love on them anyway. Not everybody's going to be your person.
Well, yeah, and I guess then that balance is hearing from you say it's not everybody just because you've been friends with them, or necessarily, like, I find my circle getting way smaller, you know, you know, people who like, you know, through my life, just different phases. If we're not kind of on that same growth path, then I find that, you know, I don't really have time for them, you know, like you know, it's just the people who want to grow themselves and I feel energized with, that's who I gravitate towards. The people who drain me, you know, or, you know, it's just, I don't have time for. So I think that to me, I feel like that's what I feel a little bit guilty about, you know? Yeah, that's where it's just like, not everyone earns that inner circle, you know?
It's so true. But here's the thing, association, y'all, we hear it all the time. Association impacts you. The part of my story that I haven't told because we're so over.
It's okay.
I dated somebody after therapy, and I mean, after, you know, a year and a half had gone by. the reason that Kelly reached out to me the first time was a different post that I had on Facebook. And what I recognized like 3 weeks ago was that one 5 or 6 month relationship that I had 2.5 years ago was still impacting me 3 weeks ago because of just the situation, high stress, low income. There was this scarcity mindset, panicked mindset all the time with this person. And when I tell you that bled all over me, and I didn't even recognize it until I heard a podcast 3 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, that's me. Y'all, that's me. I have been living that for the last 2.5 years and didn't even realize it. You know, I knew that I was not where I had been. But when you let people in your circle, you better be darn sure they're the right person. Because if you for 5 minutes let in the wrong person, it impacts you in ways that you don't even recognize. So be very selective of your circle for sure. But when it comes to this business, you definitely can be selective of it, but you can't just not let people in that want to work. They're not necessarily going to be your best friend, but they're here to work, and you can't keep them from making an income because you don't necessarily like them. You know what I mean? You don't have to like all of your people.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have those expectations too high of what we expect from that person, and then we're let down. But that's about, setting the boundaries, protecting yourself, and still being genuine and there. You
can love on them from afar. You don't have to let them in your circle. You can have a relationship with those people to some degree, but you don't have to have them in your life. And maybe that's not possible. Maybe they are people that you need to walk away from. If you're trying to be on a high functioning level and there's somebody that's just draining you, you don't need that in your life. As you have people that you recruit into this business, though, it can be, there's a fine line there. You have to have boundaries with people. I know that I've had people where you get on the phone and it's like Eeyore, right? And I'm like, okay, that's not why I'm calling. What are we gonna, you needed 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes. What do you need in those 5 minutes? And then I cut it. I don't allow it.
Yeah.
Because I can't let it bleed on me. So I mean, you have to be kind about it, but you don't have to allow it in your life.
It's good.
So some people are going to get cut out, and I promise you 9.9 times out of 10, it's going to be the right decision.
We talked about being on the fence earlier about decisions, but I think that is also something that, if we're losing someone, and we feel it, we know it's happening, and it's like, okay, what did I do? What did they do? And sometimes it's not about the blame thing. Don't blame anybody. Just let it go. Like I've told myself that, because Tracy, I also had a best friend, sister, like for years. And then this last year is like, it's just nothing. And I've had a grappled with that. I'm like, what happened? What did I do? Or I didn't do enough of, or like, it's hard. And I'm like, maybe because I moved away, because this was in Virginia, but we do that to ourselves. And sometimes if it's a woman, I think it's harder, because it's so hard to find that true other, person. Yeah.
It's true. And, I think a lot about, I know we've all have seen the quote about, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And we may not always know the reason or the season. It may be that it was only for whatever that was. And, I think that's where you have to trust God and I'm not chasing people. Here's the thing. I've said it so many times over the last 9 months. Like, I'm not going to beg you to be my friend. I'm not chasing people. If you don't want to be a part of my life, great. Let's move on. There are other people that do, because I'm worthy of being, in a place where people want to be my friend.
Well, then you realize like that energy you spent trying to keep that
Yeah,
person.
it's not worth
And
it.
when they didn't want to be there, then you open up so much more of your energy and time and your heart to others. Like it's true. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just say, you know, don't stress over it. You know, I mean, the right people will make their way into your life. You just have to be open to, you have to be vulnerable with people. You have to be real with people and be your true self and not guarded and all of those things. And the people that are going to be there are going to be there.
Well, Tracy, man, this was so good. Are you going to be in Denver?
For sure.
So if anyone
For
would
sure.
love to walk up to Tracy and say
Yeah.
hi in person, please do.
Yeah.
She, you know, she's a sweet person. She's not a girly girl, but don't let that scare you.
I can do girly things. I'm just not a big girly girl.
I'm not a girly girl either. Like I don't get my nails done. Like I got my hair done.
Oh,
That's
I
all.
do that. Oh, I mean, let's be clear. I do those
Okay.
things.
See what defines a girly girl. We're gonna.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was a tomboy growing up, and you know, I like being outside. I like doing things out. I'm not, so my boyfriend's got a 7-year-old daughter, and she's like, let's go play Barbies. I'm like, I've never played with a Barbie in my life. Not once, y'all, not once. I'm like, I don't even know what to do.
Barbie's gonna go zip lining.
I know. I'm like, this
Thank you,
is not
Sandy, huh?
me. Not me. It's yeah, it's been some work in progress for sure.
I saw
Boy, mom.
I saw a meme the other day and it says, when I say I'm outdoorsy, it means I'm on the porch with a glass of wine. I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
We need to get a
So,
hiker Barbie for you, Tracy. You could start a
yeah,
whole new line.
exactly.
Feminine with character. Love that.
Exactly. It's the girl life is different. Like I have short hair. I don't know what to do with long hair. Y'all, it's been a work in progress. Seven
Well, I
year
really
7-year-old little
appreciate
girl changing me.
I
Go ahead,
appreciate
Esther.
hi. I appreciate, Tracy, how you covered both sides of the experience with such compassion, like what it feels like to be left or what it feels like to leave, and to have an understanding that both ways can be a value, right? And I
Right.
just think it's rare, sometimes maybe not as rare in SFG, but being able to own your experiences and kind of like just take responsibility, right, for how you participated and still feel compassion for what happens. And anyways, I really appreciate
Yeah.
that about you. I've told you
Thank
that
you.
before. So
Yeah, thank you. Trauma counseling, y'all. It's really hard, but really great. You know, I think that it allows you to see everything for what it is versus all the things you come to think, you
right.
know,
Yeah.
the things you make up in your mind.
Totally.
Yeah. I told
Yeah.
you in the beginning of this call that I've called this a lot of things. And I also call it Therapy Thursday because
Mhm.
this call has been therapy for me too. Like, you know, you don't realize these things that you're holding on to or, you know, you want to talk about, you know, until you start like that little flicker, you know, and then it gets going. So it's good for
Right.
us to emote.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Tracy, for waking up early and
I got up on time. Let's be clear. I got up on time. I just had to make myself a little bit more ready to speak with people. So worth it.
Well, you look great. We can't, oh gosh,
Thank
it's
you.
just a couple weeks away. We'll get to see you in Denver and hang out and
Yep.
get to know you even more.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for showing up and turning your cameras on and participating, engaging. You belong here. I say that all the time. We belong here. It's our community, and make it a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.